I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta in Atlanta. And this is CNN.
This is really a feel-out meeting, a little bit. And President Putin invited me to get involved. Probably in the first 2 minutes, I'll know exactly whether or not a deal can be made. I may say, lots of luck, keep fighting, or I may say we can make a deal.
President Trump today setting the stage for his historic upcoming summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin, predicting there he'd know almost immediately if he can strike a deal to end a war that's ground on for over 3 years now. Trump, not the first U.S. president to rely on a personal assessment of the Russian leader in negotiations. You may remember when George W. Bush said he looked the man in the eye and saw his soul. But Trump will be the first to welcome Putin to NATO-controlled territory since the ICC issued a warrant for Putin's arrest in 2023 for war crimes in Ukraine. And Trump, again today, said he was interested in, quote, land swapping as part of any deal. He did insist today that it would be on Ukraine's behalf.
There'll be some swapping. There'll be some changes in land, and the word that they will use is, they make changes. We're going to change the lines, the battle lines. Russia's occupied a big portion of Ukraine. They've occupied some very prime territory. We're going to try and get some of that territory back for Ukraine.
All right, CNN political and national security analyst David Sanger joins our panel. David, a lot of people were supposed to be on vacation in Washington this week, but obviously this summit has things changing a little bit, including having you here with us.
Yeah.
What did you hear in the president's comments there about land swapping?
So, Casey, I think what's interesting here is what he said, and what's even more interesting is what he didn't say. What he said, of course, was land swaps, which suggests that Russia might end up with some land that they have not taken by military force so far. You heard from President Zelensky over the weekend a reminder that the Ukrainian constitution prohibits him from giving up land to the Russians or anybody else. And so that's likely to be a significant problem. But it's what you didn't hear that actually disturbs me more, and I suspect disturbs the Ukrainians and our European allies. He never once mentioned security guarantees for the Ukrainians so that Russia doesn't just take a pause, take a couple of years, rearm, and then seek again to take over the entire country. He didn't say anything about contributing to the armament of Ukraine to deter a future attack or contributing future intelligence. The Europeans stressed all of those over the land issues in their statements over the weekend. And of course, on Wednesday, the European leaders are supposed to be talking to President Trump.
Very interesting. Congressman Meyer, what do you make of how the president is handling this? And especially, he puts so much stock in his personal relationships and reads on people, but there's not a lot of evidence that American presidents, when they get up close and personal with Putin, they think they have the upper hand. Like, history usually shows actually they're wrong about that.
Not a lot of persuasion with Vladimir Putin. But if you think about it, this is really the third turn in how the Trump administration has been interacting with Russia, right? They went for kind of an unstated reset post-Biden administration when they first came in with more, I don't want to say flattery, but certainly a hostility to Ukraine that was amped up and amped up and amped up until leading to that Oval Office meeting with Vladimir Zelensky. And then you saw a turn where Putin was being increasingly intransigent. He was not reacting to the carrot, so they went back to the stick, right? And that was, we're going to give Zelensky all these things. We're signing this mineral deal. The kind of belligerence between him and former Russian President Medvedev's latest comments and repositioning nuclear submarines. And now we're in this stage where it's, okay, let's see where we are. Let's gauge this. So if Putin is going to Alaska, if Trump's going to Alaska, if Trump might be going to Russia itself, that is a big spectacle. That could be an impressive, monumental, historic occasion. He has to have something to show for it if this is going to go. And if he doesn't get that, then I think Putin knows this may be his last opportunity to reset that relationship.
David Sanger, is there any world in which Vladimir Putin's doing this without thinking that it's going to be good in the end for Vladimir Putin?
No. Vladimir Putin always thinks it's going to be good for Vladimir Putin. And so far, he's, got good reason to bet that. I mean, first of all, the Trump White House has dismantled in the Justice Department and at the State Department the units that were created to collect evidence of war crimes, Russian war crimes that could be contributed to future trials. That tells you they're not interested in going off to do that. Second, he's going to be showing up, as you pointed out, Casey, in a NATO country. On former Russian territory, but that sale was some time ago. That tells you that there's a degree of acceptance that, just sitting there with the American president, he's back in the community, the world community for negotiations. And thirdly, he's probably thinking, I can drag this out. If President Trump is not demanding an immediate ceasefire, he might be able to continue the war through the fall, where clearly he is hoping to get Odessa or some of the other port areas. The longer time goes on, the more it may play to him. So he's not quite under as much pressure, except the economic pressure of continued sanctions.
Alex Thompson, if Vladimir Putin thinks this is going to be good for him, Donald Trump, usually does these things because he thinks he can come out on top. What is the White House thinking on that score?
Well, Donald Trump always sort of likes the action hero presidency, that he's always in motion, even if it's like sometimes he'll just blow up a deal so he can come in and swoop in and say, hey, look, I got a new deal. There's also a lot of experts that believe that Vladimir Putin is playing for time and also realizes that Trump's, heir apparent, J.D. Vance, is even less willing to supply aid to Ukraine. So if Vladimir Putin, which is a bigger country with more people and more resources than Ukraine, if they can continue to sort of whittle down, and there's a lot of experts that don't believe, even if there are security guarantees, that Vladimir Putin wouldn't come up with some other reason to violate those guarantees in a J.D. Vance term.
Well, what's so interesting, too, about this action hero presidency construct is that there's a lot of Donald Trump's base that does say, I actually don't want America to be the action hero around the world. I would quite like us to be more focused at home. But I mean, I was on the set with you on Friday when he was announcing the peace deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And you could just see that he really relishes this role as somebody who is active and engaged around the world, which is fascinating given how much of his base sort of takes that maybe America just needs to stay out of it approach.
He really wants that Nobel Peace Prize, it seems. All right, David.
Before we go,
yeah,
I am mostly concerned about the fact that I'm an old school kid from the west side of Detroit. When you go into a fight, it's better to go with your friends than it is to go alone. And this president is sort of dismantling the friendship and alliances that we have around the world. And I've seen this up close from my time at USTR when I was in government to my time in the White House. We need friends when we go into these fights, and with terror fights, the NATO questions about Article 5, all the questions about whether or not we're going to stand up in the rules-based order, those things really matter in a time where we're trying to figure out how to end a war.
All right. David Sanger, thank you very much, sir, for spending some time with us. Good luck for the rest of the week. I know you're going to have a busy one.
Thank you, Casey.
All right, we'll see you soon. Coming up next here, an exclusive interview with the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, as President Trump issues a veiled threat to other big cities, warning his plan for D.C. could just be the starting point.
We have other cities also that are bad, very bad. You look at Chicago, how bad it is. You look at Los Angeles, how bad it is. We have other cities that are very bad.